With the help of the community, non-planar 3D printing is back and more accessible than ever. Today, I'll tell you how we got here, how it works best, and what still needs development. At the end of last year, I pondered the big questions that I wanted answered in 2024, putting my thoughts into a video. Some viewers didn't seem to get that many of these questions were tongue-in-cheek. Nonetheless, some good came of the whole thing, especially when it comes to non-planar 3D printing. Here's the story and my key findings. The topic in question is non-planar printing, so we should start by explaining what it is. Regular 3D printing is more like 2.5D. It's a series of flat layers stacked on top of each other to build the third dimension. The exception, of course, being vase mode, which has a continuous spiral for Z. We can always see layer lines, but on shallow surfaces we have an obvious stair-stepping effect. Where non-planar printing differs is that the Z axis can ride up and down to follow the top contours of what's being printed. So where a model is suitable, we can say goodbye to the stair-stepping on the shallow angles, and instead have a three-dimensional crosshatch effect. For certain models like aerofoils, this makes a tremendous difference in quality. Sounds great, so what's the problem? Well, I reported on this back in 2019, highlighting the work of Daniel Ahlers, whose master thesis was an incredibly detailed look at non-planar 3D printing and how it could best be implemented in the slicer. This implementation at the time was in the older slicer or Slic 3R, and as you saw from those earlier examples, it worked quite well. The trouble was, it was only available for Linux, and for me to compile it, I needed to set up a virtual environment and navigate a series of painful steps, building the software from the command line, until finally I had my working version. Good for me, but hard for viewers to replicate. And that brings us back to my video from the end of 2023. I was contacted by viewer Francois, known on GitHub as EiNSTeiN, who informed me that he had ported the changes from Slic 3R to a modern slicer in the form of PrusaSlicer version 2.6. The only trouble being that there was no releases for me to test. Which brings me to confirmation of something that I already knew: building software from source is not fun. Prusa do provide instructions for building from source, but for someone who doesn't do this for a living, it's still quite mystifying. I tried to install and set up everything that was listed, but run into the problem where Boost couldn't be found. I found some pre-compiled Windows binaries for this and installed them, but I wasn't able to link the two together, and despite many attempts taking a lot of time, I could never get it to complete. Then I thought I would fork it myself and set up GitHub Actions to compile the three platforms for me. I tried to adapt workflow files from elsewhere, and for some of them everything seemed to be okay, but ultimately no artifacts were created, which means no software to install. Previously I made a video on scarf seams in PrusaSlicer, which has now been released. And in that video I collaborated with psiberfunk, who did a lot of heavy lifting in testing the process. In later releases of PrusaSlicer, scarf joints have continued to improve, once again with psiberfunk making valuable contributions. So who better to ask to help me with compiling PrusaSlicer? And once again rising to the challenge, a day or so later I had a zip file with the non-planar PrusaSlicer compiled for Windows. Psiberfunk, he's so hot right now. This is the portable version, so to use it, all you need to do is extract the zip to a folder of your choice, and then double-click the executable. When it starts up, it looks nearly identical, but the changes we need are found in print settings, layers and perimeters, and then we scroll down to the bottom to find non-planar layers experimental. We tick a box to enable it, and then there's two parameters we need to input from our printer. And that brings me to a very obvious point: most hot ends are not suitable for non-planar. Because we are writing contours, instead of printing flat layers, we need a lot more clearance past the tip of the nozzle. So your typical hot end that has an ABL probe, a big fan duct, or both won't be suitable, as it will simply collide with the model as it's being printed. In the previous video, I removed a bunch of components, and that let the nozzle hang out enough to make non-planar printing viable, and once you're to this state, you can take some measurements. It might be easier to do this from a photo for the first one, which is the maximum non-planar angle in degrees. This is basically the angle of your nozzle tip, and the larger the better, as it will give more clearance. The second is maximum non-planar height, which is the distance from the tip of the nozzle to the next bulky object. This could be your heater block, your ABL probe, whatever sits lowest. Once you have these two parameters, you can enter them into the fields in PrusaSlicer and save a profile. The next thing I learned is that airbrush nozzles with an adapter are a double-edged sword. These were suggested by people in the comments of my previous video. They take an airbrush nozzle and then have an adapter with an M6 thread to go onto a 3D printer hot end. On paper, these are perfect for the job, with a huge clearance angle and height compared to regular nozzles. In practice, I have found some issues. As we can see, these come in two parts, with the smaller piece needing torquing against the adapter to try and get a good seal, which is difficult because it's small and delicate. I found that no matter how I tightened across two printers, I was getting oozing out the side between the two parts of the nozzle. And if I didn't collect this from time to time, it would deposit on the surface of the model. The key ended up being thread locker, and the one I had on hand claimed to seal against leakage. To seal, I applied a liberal amount between the two parts, and once hand tightened, quickly wiped off the excess to make sure nothing could get clogged. I then torqued the two together, and this seemed to alleviate the problem. However, it was next to impossible to dial in the correct flow rate. No matter what I tried, I had over-extrusion as this skinny nozzle laid down the first layer. But then later in the print, that same flow rate would leave gaps in between the extrusions of the top layers. Surface quality was generally quite rough as well, and I think this can be explained by comparing an airbrush nozzle to a standard one. If we overlay the two, we can see that the airbrush nozzle is not only steeper in angle, but there's very little material surrounding the opening. And I think this extra surface area on a standard nozzle would have a smoothing effect as it rubs on nearby extrusions. Because of this, I ended up changing back to a standard Creality style nozzle. The non-planar layers worked just fine, and I was very glad to have the early layers go down cleanly once more. One more problem with the airbrush nozzle, they had a lot more stringing than a regular nozzle. Maybe this could be dialed out, but it's another barrier. Nozzle aside, there's still autobed leveling. Most of the time it's going to be problematic and will need creative solutions. On my test Ender 3, I'm running the exchange system, which is unfortunately no longer for sale. This allows me to have different tool heads, and therefore allow me to build one up for non-planar. But even after removing the part cooling system to allow more clearance, the tip of the nozzle sits lower than the BL Touch probe even when deployed. And we want the nozzle as low as possible, so how did I solve this? Fortunately, on this printer, I put the BL Touch on the carriage separate to the tool head, and that means I can home and probe with the nozzle completely out of the way. In my start G-code, twice I use M0, which pauses the printer and waits for the user. The first time at the very start, prompting me to remove the print head. The printer will then home and finish the auto bed leveling sequence, before pausing once more and prompting me to attach the print head. The nozzle will then heat up and the print will start as normal. A more suitable printer might be one with a removable docking probe, such as the Euclid. What's better suited is a printer with a load cell behind the nozzle that touches down on the bed to measure the bed surface. And a Bambu Lab P or X series would be ideal for this, as when we remove the top cover, we have excellent clearance for the nozzle. But these printers aren't supported by PrusaSlicer, so we can't test them yet. My Monoprice Mini Delta touches the nozzle on the bed, where switches underneath detect the contact, and as such, it was pretty easy to fit an airbrush nozzle and use this for non-planar, but the build volume is quite small. The printer I really wanted to test this with was my Prusa XL, which came with one of these adapters. Using it, I could fit an airbrush nozzle, and I even hoped to take advantage of the XL's automatic nozzle calibration process. But I never got that far because the airbrush nozzle failed on the frame for the tool changer, so this one was dead in the water. Assuming you can solve these problems, here are some slicer settings that might assist you. Apart from entering your parameters and turning non-planar on, assuming your part cooling system had to be removed, you'll want to untick any cooling options, setting all of the parameters to 0, and to prevent the model from getting too hot and deforming, you'll want to lower your hot end temperature as much as you can get away with. I dropped around 20 degrees. Because of the lack of flow and to keep everything tidy, you also might want to be more conservative with your feed rates. One really important change is to come to layers and perimeters and tick avoid crossing perimeters. Normally for a travel move, the object underneath is flat because it's built layer by layer. But here a travel move might go over a hump and cause a collision. So until I finally ticked this box, I had lots of collisions and layer shifts ruining my prints. One more thing, you're going to want plenty of top layers, otherwise the non-planar surface layers won't be thick enough to cover the stair stepping underneath. You might think that you're ready to go, but let me warn you, slicing is very slow and quite buggy. Even for this simple test shape I modeled, there's a lot more going on in the background once you click slice. I've noticed that for a second, the non-planar layers will be shown levitating above the model before snapping down into place. And if you're successful, the non-planar layers will be quite obvious as you inspect them. The layer by layer preview will be completely messed up, as the Z height is changing so much, Most of the printing will be in this tiny band at the bottom, and then all of the non-planar layers will take up the rest of the vertical bar. In terms of bugs, sometimes the non-planar layers wouldn't drop onto the rest of the model, sometimes they would drop way too far and extend below the surface of the bed, and other times I would get random chunks of the model missing or floating. We also have inconsistency, this model slicing perfectly fine, but appearing quite strange when I scale it up to 150%. We can see the ghost of the original size propeller, and it seems the non-planar layers are only applied to it. And then there's the speed. Slicing is slower in general. For instance, this benchy took over an hour to slice. And this version of the propeller getting stuck during the slicing, I let it run overnight only to find it still paused in the same position, so at that point I gave up and ended the process. As far as I can tell, models with steeper top surfaces, as well as potential for having support, slow everything down even if support is turned off. For instance, the prop on the left was the one that got stuck, and the version on the right, where I filled in any overhangs, sliced quite quickly. Another quirk I noticed were these enormous vertical leaps that looked like exaggerated Z-hop. Normally this would be a simple travel move, but here the slicer is confused and makes the travel move go to the height of the tallest part. Enough of the downsides, how does it go when everything is working? When I had everything working, what was clear to me is that not every model is suitable, but the ones that are benefit greatly. Clearly, the best application is for models with gentle slopes on top, as non-planar will do an excellent job of covering over the stair-stepping that's normally present. As mentioned earlier, aerofoils are an excellent candidate, particularly because having a smooth aerodynamic surface is paramount. One test model I had was this glider by Joe Rickson, and in the example picture, we can see prominent stair-stepping in the nose. Despite this being a fairly steep angle, the non-planar did quite a good job here. It's not perfect, but I still think it looks better, and it should be more aerodynamic. My favourite example is perhaps this two-blade propeller. With normal 3D printing, the top surfaces have very obvious stair-stepping, but with non-planar, we can get this to be one continuous curved surface. Unfortunately, those weird vertical travel moves ruin it in some places. But even so, I think this is a huge improvement in print quality and appearance. I also imagine this will be very handy for people making props like helmets, as the stair-stepping we see on the top surfaces will be replaced by smooth non-planar layers. After my testing, here are some proposals for how I think this can be improved. In essence, it's all about control and conditions for how non-planar is applied. For instance, for the benchy, non-planar surfaces were being printed once there was already vertical tall walls around them. Unless you had an extremely narrow and skinny nozzle, this is going to cause a collision. I decided to print it anyway, and the failure was caught on the background of this time lapse. The airbrush nozzle I had fitted gives plenty of clearance, but certainly not that much. It would be ideal to have a box we can tick for uppermost sections, or perhaps even better, a paint-on modifier for where we want non-planar layers enforced. Another good implementation might be to print as normal, but then use non-planar ironing over the top to smooth everything out. But currently, the non-planar process is not applied to the ironing, which sits above it, along with some quite unusual vertical moves. And those errant vertical travel moves are definitely something that needs attention, as they can ruin a perfectly good print otherwise. However, I don't want to be a choosy beggar, as I'm just the messenger, and all of this comes from the generous work of the community. My contribution is to share my testing models on printables, and of course release the Windows portable version compiled by Psiberfunk. Myself and my patrons were unsuccessful in building for Linux and Mac, so hopefully others can help here so this truly is accessible for everyone. Please download, test, and increase the demand for this to be picked up in more slicers. The top of my wish list is PrusaSlicer, because then we can test on Bambu Lab printers which seem quite suitable. In the meantime, have a go and marvel as all three axes of your 3D printer work in harmony. Thank you to everyone in the community that made this possible. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy non-planar 3D printing. G'day, it's Michael again. If you liked the video, then please click like. If you want to see more content like this in future, click subscribe and make sure you click on the bell to receive every notification. If you really want to support the channel and see exclusive content, become a patron. Visit my Patreon page. See you next time.